Hey, how you guys doing? Here's my camera. Hi. How's everybody? How are you today? We don't have very many. Where's the rest of our great group here? We've been having such a good group. I think last time they all popped in as we were getting started. 12:30 is a hard time to remember when you're off doing other stuff, isn't it? I'm going to turn off this video and share my screen. I hope everybody had a good weekend. I finally got some grades in. You'll be happy to see. Everybody has really good grades. So you guys pretty much been doing a great job. Our last few projects for our Windows form stuff will impact your grades, so there's always a chance to change things for the better or worse depending on how you're looking at it. Yeah, to me, I like doing Windows forms because it's just such a great introduction to the rest of programming that you can use. So let's see. What did you guys think about Frankie? Did he do good? What did you think? Do you like him? I thought it was great to see him. And I'll set up a thank you card for us. Be looking in our collaborations. And I want you guys to just go ahead and enter something in there about your name or something. I would use the smartboard at school for us to sign it to send to him. But since we don't really have that capability being so scattered out, collaborations doesn't open on the mobile app for Canvas, so not too easy for us to sign it. So anyways, watch our collaborations and I'll set up a thank you for us to send to Frankie for taking time out of his day to talk to us and answer everybody's questions. And I really like doing the guest speakers in that format. I started doing it in the summer semester when we were doing an online class, and I really wanted a chance to have some guest speakers. And so for C#2, I have a couple of guys that do the guest speaking in that same kind of format, and they really enjoy it. And this Friday, I have people for the game programming class get 8 in the morning if you want to sneak in and listen to them. They're two guys that had a game programming business for a while that was pretty successful, and then they disbanded. So they're going to be Friday morning at 8. But it's always nice to get a chance to talk to people who, you know, have kind of just gone through what you're going through, so you can ask them what it was like and get some real inside scoops. So great. I thought that you guys made him feel really welcome, especially for being all so far apart. So that was really wonderful. Where we are. When I was grading, one thing that keeps popping up and that some people have asked for even is a little bit of information more about exception handling. That unit, if you remember, was set up to be kind of self-study along with getting things in TFS, and it can be confusing for people. And I think we need to revisit that REPL a little bit. So I'll be getting with you guys on that probably on Wednesday. We'll revisit that REPL for a few minutes. Also, don't forget the class-oriented REPL. I think it was lesson 5, which was kind of a hard one the first time through. There is a special Zoom video available in our Zoom video playlist that covers doing that lesson. So if it's something that you'd like to go back and revisit and just step right on through like it's easy peasy, you can do that with that video, and I think it'll help you. Always gaining knowledge here. That's what we're doing, building, building, building. So sometimes as we work through something, we might not understand all the pieces, just get it done. And then if we are able to revisit it later or something like it, then we get a chance to maybe understand a little bit deeper or a little bit more about each of the pieces. And that's how learning works, especially when you're working with something as fragmented as programming, where learning happens in chunks. We're still working on our GUI interface stuff, our Windows forms. You guys have the hot and cold game due Wednesday night. I know a lot of people have been working on it. We know if you run into trouble or have questions. And then what's really coming up here for this week is our Unit 3 exam. We do have a project that's due for that a week from Wednesday. And this is a survey form. So create your own survey form. It should use a lot of different Windows controls, but what it's going to do is ask people questions about something like, did you enjoy the video last week? You know, what was your favorite thing, your least favorite? But you want to ask those kinds of survey type questions in a form that allows you to use a bunch of different controls, get creative, make it look cool so that you get a chance to experiment with design. When somebody clicks your button on your survey, you should display the results of that survey like in a text box, or you could use a message box like we've used in some of our applications this semester. Either one would be fine, but to display the results of your survey. So that's your application that'll be due next Wednesday. The exam itself will be multiple choice questions, and the chapter 10, which is chapter 10 from that PDF document, chapter 9, these practice quizzes are using the same question bank, so they're a good place to prepare. Also, the Quizlet vocab terms are a great preparation for that exam because a lot of it is just keywords, things like that. So that should help you get ready. Now, this one you're going to be doing at home on your own. If you want to work with your group and create group notes to use for the exam, like we've done in class, that's fine. But just remember that would be the only resource that you should be using. And I think you can take that as soon as it is open to you up until a week from Wednesday, since it's online. All right, in Discord, changing gears here. Under the general text channel, I did make a note that I don't need you to log attendance if you're in the Zoom session. I can capture that, so I'll just have you log attendance if you watch the Zoom session later, which doesn't apply to you guys because you're here. And then last week before Frankie came, we were working on our Windows form to maintain information about audio CDs. And I've got that application zipped and posted to Discord because I wanted to make sure we were all starting at the same place. Now, if you have that application already working and you want to continue on with yours, that would be the best. But if you don't, you're welcome to download this one from Discord. Now, when you get it downloaded, be sure to extract it into a folder. So create a new folder for the solution and then extract the information in this zip file into that folder, and that should give you a nice clean spot to open as long as you've got everything extracted. Well, I'm going to give you a second to get that while I get Visual Studio open. Shoo. My form this afternoon looks much better than the terrible thing I had created this morning. Last week must have been pretty rough at 8 because my form looked miserable. Okay, has everybody got it? Ready? Here is our little form. Let's kind of review. On our form, we created information for our users to maintain our audio CD class. So they can enter in whatever data they like. We included our audio CD class CS file. And then let's look at our code that's associated with our form. I'm going to press F7 to bring up that code window. I'm going to scroll up to the top. In our form class, we created a form load event, and the form load event procedure will be fired off as the form is loading. So we really could have probably put the same code in our constructor up here, but our form load event is a little cleaner because this is all associated with our form. To create our form load event, we double-clicked on a blank spot on our form, and that created that method for us. We could create it ourselves. Now, in our form load, we set up some default values for some of our text boxes. And then we created a button, and in the event procedure that goes along with the clicking of that button, we've got some code going, and we create an instance of our audio CD. Then we use the data the users have entered to update that audio CD instance. We've got some checking here to decide based on a genre code or checkbox what code to enter for our genre. And then we use a message box to show the output of the toString method for our CD. We also put in this terrible text box change thing, didn't we? We'll have to get rid of that, but not right yet. It won't even actually bother us today. That'll be interesting. So that's where our application is so far. So what would we like to do to expand on it? Well, right now, our application is great for entering one audio CD, but our store is going to have a lot more than that. And so we need to be able to maintain more than one. And using Windows, what's become kind of common is a list. People like working with a list. So I think it would be nice for us to include a list box here, or a list of CDs, and then the user could click on one, and if they click on it, the data would show over here in our detail area about that CD. So let's get started with that. I'm going to, first of all, expand my form a little bit, so I want to have room for that list. And then I'm going to use the rubber band selection, click and hold and drag to select all of my form fields. And I'm going to move them over to this side of my form. You okay with that? Make sure you can move a bunch of stuff because it'll help you a lot. Now I'd like that list to show up over here on this side. And if I look at list type things, I have a list box and I have a list view. Each of these are very, very good controls. Today we're going to use the list box. The list view is a little bit more advanced, so it gives us even more capabilities. I'm going to put my list box here on the side. And then I'm going to look at the properties for my list box. First of all, I want to rename it. So instead of list box 1, I'm going to call this list box CD, because it's going to be my audio CDs. Now, looking at some of the other properties that are available to our list box, you'll see a lot of them are the common things that you've gotten used to. The list box does have an interesting property called items, and the items are the things that are going to show up in the list box, the lines, and the items are a collection. If I click these 3 dots, I'll go to the collection editor and I could add items to my list. We're going to add items to our list in our code, so we don't need to use that collection editor. But I basically would be setting up an array of items that appear in my list box. Other things, we can sort the items in our list box. We can set a scroll box up. If we want a scroll bar that's always visible, we can set that to true. Right now, our selection mode is set to 1. That means we'll only allow people to select one item in our list box, but we could change that. For now, let's leave it though, and let's add some code to our list box so that we can put our CD instance in that list box. I want to create an event procedure to go along with this list box. Now I could double click my list box and that would create my event procedure, but I want to remind you we can also use the events window. So let's click on the lightning bolt that takes us to our events. And the default event for a list box is selected index changed. Well, that's because whenever we're looking at the items in a list, they're items in an array. If somebody has clicked on one of those items, that would be the index value they have selected for that item. If they click on a different item, they've selected a different index value, right? So that's going to be the default event procedure. So I can create an event procedure automatically that runs when my selected index is changed by double clicking there in that text area. All right, that creates my event procedure for selected index changed on my list box. I don't really need that yet though. I was kind of getting ahead. Let me show you what we need. We're going to change up here where we show our message box first. So let's do our message box and comment it out. And instead of showing a message box, let's add this CD to our list box. Our list box has a group of items we would like to add to that group. And what we want to add, let me do the same messy up that I did this morning, is our audio CD. Now, if we look at this, it's very unhappy. It says, this is a class. Audio CD is a type, but that's not valid. Well, that's because instead of having my class name here, we should have our CD instance, my CD. So if we add our CD instance to our list box, everything will be happy. Let's run it, and we should see that list box display that one CD. I'll click something here and click OK. And there's our CD instance showing up in our list box. How are you doing? Can I see some? I'm going to stop share. I want to see some beautiful forms here. Anybody got one that's working?
All right, so here's mine. Pretty much looks exactly the same, but yeah, it's working. Like I can add those CDs here, and they're showing in their like current format. You know, just kind of just displaying all the information.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Somebody else show me it's working. So now it's working here in this vacuum. Who we got? Let's see, I see a couple people with their mics on. Will they help us? Will they show us? Come on, let me see one. Tomas is in here twice. Yay, Dylan. Oh, he just kept adding. That's nice. You can do that too, can't you? Beautiful. Oh, it looks awesome. Now, I know our list doesn't look super great. It's not beautiful over there in our list box, but we'll clean that up a little bit. We're more concerned about making it work. Thank you so much. I'll take back over then. I like just knowing that everybody's okay since I can't, walk around and annoy you. Look over your shoulder. So yeah, our list is looking kind of ugly. We're just taking that data directly from our toString and slapping it into that list box. So we could do some formatting on that to clean things up. But we're not quite there yet. So let's do some more important things first. So we've seen now that we could just add a CD to our list, and we could, every time we ran this application, we could add like 7 or 8 CDs, like, they were just clicking OK, which is great to add some test data. Or we could create a class that generates some test data for us. Let's do that. In our project, let's create a new class. So let's add a class. And we'll call this database test. So this is going to be generating data like it's our database. So we're just going to say, that's what I do. I generate test data. I'm a happy, happy camper because I am just going to generate some test data. So in our class that generates test data, we need a method to actually do the work. We want it to be callable from our form application, so we'll make it public. Now, at this point, we're going to make it return an array of audio CD objects, our test objects. So we'll call this method generate data. The first thing we need to do is create an array of audio CD instances. Call it my data. And it's a new audio CD instance. And let's put like 10 entries in our array. Then let's go into a for loop. We'll use an integer named I, starting at 0. And we want to run while I is less than our my data array's length. We want to add to I each iteration. Now within our for loop, we're going to create a new instance of an audio CD in our array. So at index position I of our array, let's create a new audio CD. Now again, we created an empty audio CD. Now we need to put some data in there. So my data index I, that's our instance, right? We can say set the album ID, and let's set it equal to the value of I. How's that? Doesn't like that. What's wrong? Oh, can't convert int to string. We'll do our toString method there. Now I'm going to continue on and fill in all of our class data fields. let's see, we can make this the test. We could say album. I'd like it to automatically insert the value of I into my string. So I'll put a $ before my string to indicate it's interpolated. It should include the value of the I variable. So that'll give it a name, be album 1 or 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then some other things we can do. Let's see, we need to generate our cost. We'll make the BI. And then we need our genre. We just make them rock. Now, as we go through this for loop, we're going to fill up our array with 10 instances of these myCD objects. The only difference will be those values of I on those different objects. And then when we're done, we're going to be able to return that myData array to whoever called this to generate our test data. So we shouldn't need to refer to this very much or update it very much because it's got everything we need in it. Let's go back now to our form. And in our form, we can call this new generate data method. One thing, we do want to make this static because I don't want to have to create an instance of this database test class. I just want to be able to call this generate data method. Okay, so static should serve us well there. So back to our form. In our form, we're generating some test data basically here. Let's comment that out. Let's create an array of audio CDs. And we'll do 10 entries. That's what we did in our test data generator. Now to load our myCDs array, we can just call our database test generate data method. Now when we get done and we return control back to this form load, we're going to have myCDs is going to be an array full of CD instances. We're still not going to see them. We have to actually go through that array and move each of those into our list box. So we need another for loop. So very similar because we're basically going through the same thing. We could have kept that code here in our form load to generate that test data, but it was nice to get it separated off someplace else. So in this for loop, we're just going to say that we want to take our list box and look at the items, add to the items. What we want to add is in our list of CDs, the one at position I. Let's see if that works. Should have everything all kosher. Let's try it. Okay, now I've got my 0 through 9 albums like I was hoping. Everybody have that? Anybody got trouble? Yay. More thumbs up, more thumbs down. Trouble, trouble. Yay. I saw where somebody recorded a session of sounds from the national parks. I'm gonna get those to play in the background so I won't feel so all alone. I'll have like bears and stuff behind me. Yay, I'm seeing some thumbs up. Did you guys get it? You are so good. That was so messy. Are you sure? Does someone have trouble? Someone's having trouble and they're just not telling us. Tell us so we can fix ya, because we're gonna do some more with this thing. It'll be better if it's working. Good? Everybody's just good, good, good. Call to the database isn't working. What is it doing to you, Chris? First thing to check, look at your database test and make sure you added that static keyword, because if we don't have that, it's not going to work right. I'm going to stop sharing so you can share with us and we can see what's going on with it. Oh, okay, cool. Static makes a big difference when we want to be able to call something directly. And that's why I like doing this generating test data separately, because it really points out to us how we can just call this thing like it's a method. So it's nice to have it in its own class, because, you know, if someone else was working on an application that had to do with our audio CD, they could use this same class to generate their test data. And as you'll see as we go through it, we're going to have to add a little bit more to it. So that would make it even better to share so that it doesn't have to be reinvented all the time. All right, so we have our test data that's filling up our list box. So when we run, we'd like to be able to click on one of these items and have the data, the detail information for that item display in our detail area. So that's the first thing we're going to work on. Let's try that. Whenever we set up our list box, we added that event, that default event procedure. And I told you it was the selected index changed event. So whenever we're working with a list box like this, or any sort of control with a collection, keeping track of what our current place is in the list is very important. So we're going to need to set up a variable that we can access from all of our methods to be able to control this effectively. So let's go up to our class statement. And that's just a partial class statement right now because we're working with a form. And let's add some class level instance variables. We want to create an integer that we can use to keep track of that current index. So this is going to be our current place in the list. I'm going to set this equal to -1 to begin, because I don't want, if I set it to 0, that would be a valid value. And that's not really going to help me if I need to decide, you know, if somebody's already clicked on something. -1 will help me. I'll be able to tell that nobody's clicked on anything. And then we're going to need an instance of our audio CD that we can use throughout our entire application. So let's go ahead and create one. We'll call it the CD. It's just going to be an empty audio CD instance. We're really just kind of wanting to reserve that name at this point. Say that's what our CD is called. Okay, so now Our selected index code is down at the very bottom. So the first thing we want to do is update current index. And we're going to set it equal to our ListBox control. And then looking at our ListBox control, we're going to scroll through our properties and find what would be the best thing that we can see. And I sort of know. So. Now, we have a lot of different items here. We're looking for our selected index. So listbox_cd.selected index. And that'll tell us which row they clicked on. Now, because we know which row they clicked on, we can update our audio CD. The CD is going to be equal to the ListBox CD items. Remember all of the ones in the list. But this time, we'll be looking at those items using an index. And then it's like, I'm really mad at you. It says, you've got this thing in this list box. It's just a thing. And I can't make that object into an audio CD. Well, I can. Let's do it. We'll cast it. We know it's an audio CD object, so it's okay for us to cast that as an audio CD object just to tell the system that that's what we're working with. So yeah, it is. It's an audio CD. Okay, so now we know which one we're working with, and we know what CD instance we're working with. When we were reading the data from the form, we used our text box values to update the data values in our class. We're kind of going to go the other direction now because we're going to take the data that's in our class and use it to display in the text boxes. Let's create a method to do that. We'll name it Show CD. Now, the first thing we want to do is set up our text box ID. It is the album ID in our CD. Our text box album. Is our album ID. Now this one, our cost, we'll have to convert it to a string to display in that text box. Next, we have our numeric up down, the number of tracks, and it's the value property that we set for our numeric up down. And lastly, we want to do our genre. Remember, our genre is a code, so we can't just display the code. We have to convert that code to which radio button should be clicked, right? So if CD's genre is C for classical, we want our radio button classical dot checked to be true. That's how we check that radio button. And if Best CDs. Genre is H. We want our hip hop checked. If it's J, jazz. I'm going to go ahead and put an else if because we did leave an option that it could be unknown, and we don't have a radio button to check for that. So we'll just leave that unchecked. And if it's R, it would be walk. Really, we don't want any checked. So I'm just going to leave that out. I go back on. So I want to get this tested. All right, so now we're saying all of this code is going to show a CD in our detail area of our screen. So let's call that to show that CD. So we're just using that, whichever one they clicked on. Let's try it. Mad at me? What's it mad at me about? Kendall's asking if the CD works similar to the this, and it does because the this keyword is meaning this form object or this current object, and our audio CD or the CD is an object, so it displays all that IntelliSense in the same way. Is that what you mean? Okay, let's look at our error. My error is that I'm using a numeric up down, and it says the value property has to be between the minimum and the maximum that I set, right? And value of 0 is not valid. So I could change my form to make it accept a valid value of something else. So let's go look at that where we're building our test data. Because instead of changing my form, I need to change my data. And you'll see sometimes it's one way and sometimes it's the other. But in our test data, I've left out our num tracks. So it's set defaulting to 0. So if I put in num tracks and I set it equal to I, that wouldn't be any good, right? Because I could still get 0. So I could make it I plus 1, and then I should never have 0. Let's try it and see if that fixes that problem. Oops, I gotta stop running. Did it keep my change? Shouldn't be making changes like that while it's running, but yep, it kept it. All right, so now I should be able to click on one. Oh, there it is. So I've got my album 5 here. Ah, looks good. What are you humming about it, Madison? Problems?
So mine is not changing the information that it's showing when I click on a different CD.
Oh, okay. Let's look at the code here. So in the list box, selected index changed. Do you have that method?
Oh, okay. So I think I forgot to put that call to it. There you go. All right, that's all it was. I forgot to put the call to the method there after we went off and made it.
It looks like such major problems, doesn't it? But when everything's all organized, it's usually pretty easy to fix. That's nice. Yay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so that looks good. One thing that I don't like though is that in our show CD, we added all this logic here to make sure we're clicking the right radio button, and we ended up with just rock. So we know that the rock one is working, but we really need our test data to do a better job about testing this. So let's make that a little bit more robust. Go to your database test application and let's change this a little bit. Let's say if I modulus 4, that should give us 4 different things, right? So if we come up with 0, if we divide our current value of I by 4 and we're looking at the remainder, we come up with 0. Let's say our genre, oops, I got a whole bunch of squares there. Our genre is classical. Else if I modulus 4 equals 1, we'll say it's hip hop. Else if I modulus 4 equals 2, make it jazz. And finally, our last possibility would be rock. Okay, so that should bust up our test data a little bit. So we have several different genres. So we're not just looking at rock alone. And then we can test and make sure that our decoding is working properly. So let's run that and check. I've got a jazz here. Click on the first one, I've got classical. So I should see things moving around. Is that working okay for everybody? On the ListBox chain, it's throwing and out of range. Let's see what it's doing, Chris. Let me quit sharing. Show us what you got, Chris. Stuart works. There he is. Let's see what it does. Someone's answering here. Yeah, so why would it have not changed? It's still the -1. And the selected index will actually be -1 if nothing's been selected. So let's close this And I want to see in your form, let's look at your form. Click on your ListBox one and then so stop running. Yeah, there we go. And then let's go to the events. And that looks right. If you double click that, does it go straight to your code like it should? Yeah. So current index. That looks good. Let's go back to your code. Now let's see where our current index is. That just looks perfect. It shouldn't be giving you any trouble at all. Let's run that again. Where's your test data? Yep, it looks fine. Did you not get that test data stuff created? Let's go fix that because that's going to make it really hard to test. Where is your test data class? Do you see it in your Solution Explorer? That looks good. And then where you're calling it, that all looks perfect. Should be in your form load. Oh, after that, let me bring up the code you need. We need that for loop, one more for loop. This for loop right here. We're gonna go through that array that we just created in our test database generate, and we're gonna add each entry in that array to our list box. I told you guys to get lots of practice with for loops. They're just kind of all the same, huh? Let's get lots of practice. Okay, everybody else okay? Looks good, looks good.
So my code looks pretty much the same, but for some reason it's only generating classical, and then the next three will be like an unselected.
Oh, let's see it. Let me stop sharing. Okay, there you go.
All right, so let's see, here is the ifs and else ifs, right? And then here's the last else. So if it's none of these, or hold on.
Fancy, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But then in the database, here is the if I modulo 4 equals 0, set it to C, I modulo 4 equals 1, H, etc. And then, is that it? Should there be anything else in this part?
No, that should do it.
Okay. So let me run it real quick. But basically, so the first one will be classical, but then the next three will be no genre, and then it'll be classical. So it looks like the three other than. It looks like basically only the first test case is becoming true, and the others, for the other ones, it's just not working. But I'm not getting any errors or anything, so that's pretty strange.
That is. Let's go back to your test data generation. Let's change something so that we can see your output a little bit better. I'm going to take over the screen for
Okay.
a moment, and we'll come back to that. Because it's being really hard to see what we have over there because our output is so ugly. So let's look at our audio CD class. All that output is coming from our 2-string. If I run this and show it to you, we've got too much verbiage. You know, we just are trying to be too helpful because before we were just displaying words. So we can get rid of some of that. I think that I'm going to delete everything except the colon, and then I'm going to put a space after the album ID, and I'm going to do that for each of our different data items. So it's still not going to necessarily be gorgeous, but it should be a little more readable. Then we can see what we have for each individual item. And that should be everything. Okay, making those small changes now to our 2-string should make our output look a little better. At least we should be able to see more of it. So now I can indeed see that genre code and different things like this. So at least I've got an idea of what's going on. I can click on things and make sure that I can still see stuff. So before we go back to looking at and testing things, I want you to notice how easy it was for us to change how we impacted everything just by making one change in that class. And that's why it's so important for us to try to separate everything into classes and into all these separate pieces. When we're working with forms, there can be a lot of different pieces and it can be kind of hard to keep them all together. So it's okay if you have to kind of look a little bit for some of them. Okay, Madison, do you see anything now that you can see your codes?
Yeah, so I edited the things and it's showing them as being generated with the different genres.
Okay, so let's look at where it's reading them. Let me stop sharing. Let's just look at that code where we're displaying them.
Okay. So they're being displayed right here. See, so maybe it's an issue. Okay, let me.
Oh, okay. In that one, when you're showing, we don't want to change the CD this time. We want to change our radio button. So
And
whenever, let me get that, bring that up so I can say it. So if the genre is C, we want radio button classical to be checked. So we've got that. Sorry, I'm going blind. Hip hop is true. The
and then if the case
that
is,
looks right.
let's see, so like this is seemingly the only part where it's failing. It looks like this is working and
Yeah.
it's assigning it the genre because it's listing it with that genre. So somewhere there's a disconnect between this.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I got these written correctly.
Yeah.
They're written as characters.
Yeah, everything looks great. Anybody else having any interesting trouble like that? Something's crossed over somewhere. Usually we can have different troubles from different people. Well, Madison, hang on to that and we'll figure it out. But let's go back to moving on and we'll figure it out. Somehow, I know we will. There's just a couple more things that I would like to get done before we move out of our class today. So let me refocus. Sometimes I have to run my app to see where it was. Oh yeah, I know what it is. Whenever we're looking at our application here, I'd like to press the tab key and see how it moves around the screen. So mine was doing okay, and then it jumped to the OK button, and then back to my genre. I don't know about you guys, but whenever the tab button doesn't work right, it can be kind of frustrating, especially if you have a lot of data to enter. So let's look at how that tabbing is set up. Something nice and easy. In our form, if I look at my list box, first of all, I have to go back to my properties because I was looking at the events. And when I look at my properties, I know that like the visible property determines whether the control is visible on the form or not, things like that. But there's some other controls that can impact that kind of stuff. And tab stop and tab index are some important ones. A tab stop is a control that the tab key will stop at, right? So if somebody's pressing the tab key, it's going to stop at all those different controls. The tab index determines what order that's going to happen in. Now I'd like my list box to be first, so I'm going to set it to tab index 0. My audio ID should be the next thing, so I'll set it to 1. My name, 2. The number of tracks to 3. My cost, my genre, and finally my button. Now you can see that things kind of jumped around a little bit because every time we put a control on our form, it's given a tab index, and a lot of our controls, like our labels and things, are not tab stops. But we can just renumber those, and it's a really nice thing to do for our users. We're not quite done with our form, so we might have to do that again. But if I run now, I should see that my tab key goes in the order that I would expect. And then I don't hate the app. Now, sometimes I might like something to not be a tab stop at all. Like maybe if I had some sort of status message or something, let's put a status message on our form. I'm going to make it a text box. And by using a text box, I don't know, there might be things I can use in a text box that I couldn't find in a label, like being able to control the size exactly, things like that. So for my text box, there's some things I want to change about this. First of all, I'll name it text box message. And then down at the very bottom, or well, let's see, I'll fix my back color. I want my back color to be the same as my form because I want it to kind of blend in. Not the same color, huh? And then I think that my for color, again, I need to brighten that up. I won't be able to see it. Now it's getting to look like something that could be a message, but I can make some additional changes. I want it to not be a tab stop. Another property I can change is read only. I'm going to set that to true. That means that the user can't change it. Let's see. That should be good. They shouldn't be able to mess with it. Let's use our text box message. In your code, after we run our show CD method, let's update our text box message. To say something like item displayed. Now, the only other place in our code so far that we would want to update this message is at the end of our form load. At the end of our form load, after we've added all of the CDs to our list, we want our text box message text to say data loaded. Now let's run that. Item displayed. So we see our nice message down here. It's a little bit different than if we used a label. You could try it as a label to see how it changes things. So great, we've got that added. Now, another thing that we might want to do is when we first display our form here, we're displaying a list. And as we work towards making this a full-fledged app, we're going to have an add button that allows the user to add data for a new item. We're going to have an update button that allows them to update an item they've clicked on. And then it would be nice if we had a delete button that allowed them to delete an item they've clicked on. So we can do all of those things. But that means that we should be protecting all of these fields. We don't want the user typing stuff in over here when we think they're working over here. Does that make sense? We want to kind of control that. So let's do something to make all of these fields be protected. I'm going to go down to the very bottom of my code. I should add some comments. Let's do that. Jumping around, sorry. In our show method, we want to use the data in the audio CD class to update use controls. Then our selected index changed. Update the time item. So what I'm going to do now is add a new method to make it to where people can't accidentally type things in. So if I'm going to disable all of these text boxes and things, there's probably going to be a time when I'm going to need to turn around and enable them. So instead of making methods that do each, why don't we just use one method to do both? We'll pass it a Boolean value of true or false, and then it can do the work. So can take our text box ID dot enabled, and we'll set it equal to that value that was passed to us, true or false. Album. Cost. And then the last thing, okay, is our genre. So we have to do each of our radio buttons. And then finally, our button. Because we don't want people to be there just randomly clicking on a button when we're not ready. So I have this great method created. So whenever we're looking at one item, that's our detail information. And we're going to enable or disable our form controls for all of those. So we would like to do this whenever we display our main list. So in our form load, I'm going to do it before our data loaded button. I'm going to add in that I want to call our enable disable method. And because I want to disable all of those controls until somebody clicks the add button, I'm going to pass it a value of false. Let's try it. Now I shouldn't be able to do anything in any of our detail items over here. If I press tab, shouldn't really go anywhere, right? Because there's no place else to go to. But if I click on one of my items, I should see its information over here in this detail area. Notice it's kind of grayed out because those are controls are disabled. We did a lot. You guys have almost like a full-fledged app here, huh? The database behind the scenes, the real one, and you'd be like cooking with gas. It looks really good. Any problems? Just Madison and a weird genre problem. Everybody else okay? Now I'll go ahead and zip this one up and post it to Discord because we did do so much, and I do want you to kind of review through it, see what we have going on. This project that we're building is going to be very similar to the one that's your final project. So it's really, really helpful to you to make sure that you're getting all those pieces, understanding how things fit together. It can be a little bit scattered. If anybody's having any trouble getting anything to TFS or anything, stick around with Madison and we'll get those problems worked out. Otherwise, we'll see you on Wednesday. I think we're good to go there. That's about the same spot we were, so we are good. Madison, let's see what's going on with yours.
All right. So, yeah, other than that, it is working fine. I think it's just an issue where the thing that is setting the checkboxes is having the issue.
Hmm. So they're coming across on your list, okay.
Yeah, they show up in the form properly with their code and the actual genre listed.
So let's set a breakpoint right before that if statement or at that if statement and keep going
How
just
do how do I
a
do that again?
little further over to the light gray on the other side of the number. There you go.
Okay, okay. Had the idea.
Yep. So then click on one and we should see our breakpoint take off. So let's see if you mouse over your genre, it should show you what it is.
In the form?
Oh, just there in your code. Just if you put your mouse on it.
Oh, are you talking about like one of these?
It should show you just mousing over it. You mean so if you expand this over on the left in your locals window down.
Oh, do you mean like this? It looks like
There
it
it is.
says H.
Oh, okay. So that makes sense. So let's step into. That doesn't matter how you, whatever you want to do there. Now, what about step into that one?
Oh, wait, hold on. Let me turn that off. Oh, never mind.
Did it set it? So it's doing that else.
It's saying it's H, so I'm not sure because it looks like it went straight to this one and then jumped down to here.
Yeah,
I can step back, right?
try it. It looks like it did it right and then went to your else clause.
Let's see. This one is album one. Uh,
Scroll down a little further there in that
oh,
local.
there is no scroll.
Oh, there is none. It won't let you go.
Yeah, there's no up or down. It's just this is everything. So it's saying text equals jazz, checked equals false. So it's for those radio buttons.
So that what's actually in there?
That's that's strange.
Uh,
Um,
oh no, I see.
but
That's your actual radio button. So that's looking at the form. So we
yeah,
should be able to see your audio CD in the locals. If you expand the lower this. Oh, the CD. There it is. Okay,
yeah,
so it's definitely H hip hop.
yeah.
No
It's saying
problem
it's
there.
H.
Looks good.
I think the issue is, if you notice,
Mm-hmm.
these look like they're looking at the forum, so that's whatever. But this one also has rock again, and it's saying like this is the only one that's showing whether it's checked or
Mm-hmm.
not. And it's saying it's false, and that's for rock, but this is hip hop.
Hmm.
So I think, huh? So this should be setting the genre to H, and then once it's set to H, should be.
It should just end out of that if statement. We shouldn't really see anything else happen there.
Yeah, yeah.
Got some magic stuff going on. I'm trying to see. There's got to be something that's like making it think that if statement has ended.
Hmm. Let me try this. I know it probably shouldn't matter, but
Yeah, it's acting like it's not handling things properly. I don't blame you. Oh, that's what it is. Duh, duh, duh. I'm gonna let you see
It's
it.
because I don't have anything around the else. And the
It's
else
the
is
L's,
multiple
yeah. So
lines.
it's doing your last three each time. Your
That
famous
makes
mode.
sense.
I just couldn't see it at all.
Oh, oh, it's because I saw that breakpoint. It's like, what did it do? Stop debugging.
See, I should have put that in, huh?
So
Oh,
it
that was
looks
much
like that was it. It's working
better.
now. Awesome. Okay, so that's what it was. I
It's
just
solved.
wasn't paying close enough attention.
And that's what it was I did this morning that I didn't do this afternoon is we stepped through stuff with the debugger. And I was like, you guys, I've just tortured you already.
I guess the takeaway here is that it is a good thing that normally I always put braces anyways, because that
Yes.
could save me.
Well, isn't it bad though? I mean, I think that it's Python's fault that we get so used to looking at stuff, and if it's indented, it's like, oh, it's fine.
Yeah, and also because I'm taking a web dev, so like most of that is just indentation as well.
Is it? It's all
Yeah.
end tags and all that fun stuff. So,
Hmm.
looks good. Okay, anybody else? Trouble. You guys got everything okay? Looks great. I'm gonna go then. See you Wednesday.